It's almost time for Jesus to return. However, there are some things that have to happen between now and then. And so we want to think a little bit about what needs to take place. If we expect Jesus to come soon, then there's some other things that have to happen before that. In the story of Samson in the Old Testament, we see that he had a serious problem with women, and he was visiting this prostitute, and she wanted to know what was the cause of his strength. And so he told her a lie, and when she believed him, he was sleeping there. She had it all prearranged that the Philistines would grab him, and that would be the end of Samson's problem to the Philistines. And these are the words that she said. And she said unto him, "The Philistines be upon thee, Samson." Well, he didn't learn a lesson, and so she asked him again. And it happened 3 times before he told her the truth. You would strangely wonder why, after 3 times of telling him that the Philistines are upon you, that he would tell her again. But you know, that's what happens when people get addicted to sex and other things. But there's a message in this. I don't know how many times God has been telling us that it's just about time for the Philistines to be upon us. And are we ready for that? Or are we going to be caught in the same condition that Samson was? If we don't wake up, we're going to be in the same situation that he was in. In the book Evangelism, page 705, it says, "Wickedness is reaching a height never before attained." Now just think about that word never. We have the flood story, we have the fact that the world got so bad that God had to destroy it with a flood. Now, Satan does a lot of bad things, but he didn't do the flood. That was from God. And he destroyed the whole earth. And then things got so bad that people's faces looked demon-possessed. And Jesus came to try to change society. But now, it's worse than it has ever been before. Wickedness is reaching a height never before attained. And yet, many ministers of the gospel are crying, peace and safety. Don't worry. Yes, that call, the Philistines are upon thee, is taking place in the terrible wickedness that exists in the world today, and especially in our country. And how much longer can God hold off the destruction? He can't hold it off much longer. It's just about to happen. Oops. In the Fundamentals of Education, page 335, it says the false watchmen are raising the cry, all is well. You know, in those days they had a wall around the city because that was their protection. And during the night, the watchman would walk along the wall. And if he didn't see any army approaching or any danger approaching, he would tell the people, all is well. But what would you think of a watchman that has the army already close to the city wall and ready to attack the city, and he goes around saying, all is well? The false watchmen are raising the cry, all is well. But the day of God is rapidly approaching. Its footsteps are so muffled. Notice that. Its footsteps are so muffled that it does not arouse the world from the death-like slumber into which it has fallen. So we have all these pastors that are saying all is well, don't worry, everything is okay, there's no danger yet. But I'm here to tell you that's not true. We are in tremendous danger of all kinds of trouble, and if we don't wake up, it's going to catch us like it did Samson that fourth time that he told her the truth. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, which is just the chapter after we were reading, Paul says, "For yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night." So the Bible presents the coming of Jesus as a thief in the night. Not that everybody is unaware, and God doesn't want us to be unaware, but if we are sleeping, then it will come on us like a thief. For when they shall say, peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that that day should overtake you as a thief. Now, Paul is saying that there are some people that are awake, and it will not take them by like a thief, but the majority is going to catch them like a thief. Therefore, let us not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober. So God is calling, and He's been calling for a long time. You need to get ready. Terrible events are about to happen. Things are going to take place that we have known about, but we didn't think they were so soon. And when they strike, it will be like that hurricane that's coming into Florida upon that part of the country. In Acts of the Apostles, page 260, it says, "There are in the world today many who close their eyes to the evidences that Christ has given to warn men of His coming. They seek to quiet all apprehension, while at the same time the signs of the end are rapidly fulfilling. And the world is hastening to the time when the Son of Man shall be revealed in the clouds of heaven." Paul teaches that it is sinful to be indifferent to the signs which are to precede the second coming of Christ. Calls it what? Sinful to be unaware of the signs that are taking place. Those guilty of this neglect, he calls children of the night and of darkness. So anyone that's unaware of the signs that are fulfilling is a part of the darkness of this earth. And God is saying, you need to change sides. You need to get out of that side and be fully awake. Now, part of the problem is that you have to look carefully and deeply at times to really be aware of what signs are fulfilling. Because remember it said, they come with muffled tread. In other words, they're like the Indians that used to live in this country that could walk with moccasins, and you wouldn't even know that they arrived because they could walk so softly. They didn't break any sticks. They didn't crack any leaves. They could walk silently to attack their enemy. And that's what Satan has planned. Now, one of the things that has already happened, well, let me tell you several things that have happened. Number one, religious liberty has been slipping out the back door for a long time. We don't have full religious liberty anymore. There are issues that we cannot speak about without getting in trouble with the law. It used to be, when this country was formed, that you could speak about anything, even if it stepped on somebody's toes, you could speak about it, because you had the right to do that. But that's changing now. We don't have the right to speak about some things without getting in trouble with the law. And so the enemy has been moving to control us, and we haven't been doing much about it. And it's going to get worse. It's going to get soon to where I believe the book Great Controversy will be considered hate literature, and if we preach what is in that book, we'll be in deep trouble. That's serious. It's showing a time of the end is upon us. And those Philistines are upon us. Another evidence is that I understand that the Pope had been promoting, quite openly when he was here, that we needed to have a law that everybody would be off of work on Sunday, so that the climate change could be stopped by everybody resting on one day. And there's no indication that it's supposed to be a religious law. It's just something to benefit the family. Well, we heard about it when he was here, and quite a bit of talk took place. But do you know what happened since that time? That particular idea has been presented to the House of Representatives, and it has been passed by the House of Representatives. Now, the only thing that needs to happen is for it to pass the Senate, and when it passes the Senate, it'll go before the President. If the President signs it, it's the law of this country. And you know where that brings us. And so, have you been aware of these things? Have you been keeping up with the tread of events? If not, you've been sleeping, and you better stop sleeping, because we need to be aware of the signs that are fulfilling. We have to raise the question, who are the people that are crying peace and safety? In 2 Timothy 3, 1-5, it says, "In the last days perilous times shall come, for men shall be lovers of their own selves, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof." Now, he gives several important indicators that the enemy will come upon us like a thief if we're like this. The first one is that if we are selfish. Now, we can't help the fact that we're born selfish. Everybody's born selfish. But Jesus has the power to change that, to become unselfish. And instead of being lovers of ourselves, we're lovers of other people. Not that we have to hate ourselves, but we are interested, like we studied in the lesson, in ministering to the needs of other people. The second one that he mentions is lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God. I've noticed that for years and years, people are more willing to attend a movie than they are to attend church. And that another phenomena is that when they go to a movie, they want to sit on the front seat, but when they go to church, they want to sit on the back seat. There's an indicator here about our interest. Where are we? You know, I've made a lot of calls after I preach a sermon. I don't know whether I will today, but I make a lot of calls. And I have noticed again and again, most of the people that come forward with the call come from the first half of the congregation. So a person decides what their reaction to the message is going to be by where they sit in the meeting. But here, he warns us, don't be lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God. It's time for us to love anything that has to do with God and to get the most benefit out of anything that has to do with God, because it's natural to be lovers of pleasure. And then those two things have a tendency to lead us to the third one. We have a form of godliness. In the last days, it's not going to look like a bunch of ungodly people in the world. It's going to look like the world has gotten converted, and that they are, for once, they are willing to follow God. The only problem is they're not willing to do what the Bible says in everything. Some things, yes, but not everything. And so this having the form of godliness is really a dangerous thing, because at the same time, they are denying the power of God. The power of God to work in their life, the power of God to change them. And when he points out where they need to change, they don't want to do it. They deny the power of God, and yet they go to church and they have a form of godliness. And Christ Object Lessons 4:11 says, talking about those verses, this is the class that in time of peril are found crying peace and safety. They lull their hearts into security and dream not of danger. So if in any way we're lovers of our own selves, if we are love pleasure more than the things of God, if we're more willing to go to some, concert that's just entertainment, it's not really helping us to know God better, or whatever it is, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God, if we're more interested in that, then we are crying peace and safety. And if we have only the form of godliness, but we're denying the power, then we're crying peace and safety. There's an awful lot of people crying peace and safety. It's not just the pastors. It's everybody is crying peace and safety. Don't worry, Jesus' coming is not soon. There's time. There's plenty of time. Don't get alarmed. In Christian Service, page 55, it says, there is cause for alarm in the condition of the religious world today. Now, a lot of people that are religious, they condemn the people out in the world. The biggest problem is not out in the world, it's in the church. God's mercy has been trifled with. The multitude make void the law of Jehovah, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. Here's the problem. We've got people teaching, pastors teaching, Sunday school, Sabbath school. We've got people teaching things that the Bible does not teach. And yet they are saying peace and safety by their method. Infidelity prevails in many of the churches in our land. Not infidelity in its broadest sense, an open denial of the Bible. See, that's the one we're watching out for. People in the church are saying, well, if you're an atheist, that's serious. You're saying God doesn't exist, or that you don't believe that God involves himself in the affairs of man. But That's not the most dangerous form of infidelity. The most dangerous form is what's in the church today. But an infidelity that is robed in the garb of Christianity, while it is undermining faith in the Bible as a revelation from God. Now, they don't have to find fault with all the Bible. As long as they only find fault with some of the Bible, they are promoting infidelity. Because if they think that this part of the Bible doesn't need to be followed, somebody else then could decide that another part of the Bible doesn't need to be followed. And so they're promoting infidelity, and it grows to where more and more parts of the Bible don't need to be followed. Protestants, when they got started, now the Catholic Church has never believed that you should follow exactly what the Bible says. They never believed that. But when Protestants started, they believed that if the Bible says it, then that's what we do. And it's supposed to stay that way, but it hasn't been staying that way. Fervent devotion and vital piety have given place to hollow formalism. As the result, apostasy and sensualism prevail. This is what happened in the country of France. The country of France turned away from God. They had the full-blown infidelity, and it ended up in the reign of terror, and they destroyed their country so successfully that their country has never been much since that time. And they just drove out the capable people who were, willing to follow the Bible, and they just absolutely destroyed their country. This is pointing out that the same thing is going to happen again, but through a very different way. Infidelity, yes, but the infidelity of saying, you don't need to follow that in the Bible. The Bible says the seventh-day Sabbath is to be kept. Nobody, even though there's a reward offered of $10,000 or more, nobody has found a text that says that the Sabbath should not be kept. And yet, they're still teaching infidelity, that you don't need to follow the Bible. And I could give a list of topics that are the same. This is going to lead to the exact same outcome that France had, but this time it's going to be worldwide. And we're going to be in the middle of it because Jesus doesn't come till after that. And so those things are going to happen. Here, there are three conditions that show whether we are crying peace and safety or not. When the scorner, that is, the rejecter of truth, has become presumptuous. In other words, he's not worried about God. He's not worried what God will do. He is even boasting about he can do whatever he wants and God will do nothing. That's what they did in the time there when they got into the reign of terror. One man even told publicly before the whole legislature that, if you don't do anything to us, God, then who's going to believe in you? And you know what? God didn't seem to do anything for close to 300 years. But when God spoke, wow, did he ever speak. And things happened that destroyed their country. It doesn't pay. But that's the way some people are today. Another one, when the routine of work in the various money-making lines is carried on without regard to principle. Boy, is that going on today. I get a report on the lawsuits against companies I'm not sure how I got on their list, but they send it to me very frequently. And almost all of the lawsuits that are taking place against companies are because the companies have lied about their products. And it is getting to where dishonesty is the main thing today. You can't believe anything hardly that they tell you without regard to principle in the money-making lines. The third one, when the student is eagerly seeking knowledge of everything but his Bible. People don't go to college and university to learn about the Bible today. Even in theological schools, they learn precious little about the Bible. These three conditions that were given so that we would know that the end was here, those three conditions are full-blown. Now maybe they will get worse, I don't know, but they're full-blown already. They don't have to get any worse. When those three conditions exist, it says Christ comes as a thief. All this came from Desire of Ages 635. In a Morning Watch book, I always forget that one, EP 105. Oh, Eternity Past, I think is what it is. Eternity Past. The people are dreaming of prosperity and peace. Isn't that what you hear from most people today? I mean, you hear a little bit about a financial crash that is going to happen, and it doesn't happen, to where people think, well, it's probably not going to happen. The multitudes cry, peace and safety, while heaven declares that swift destruction is about to come upon the transgressor. On the night prior to their destruction, the cities of the plain rioted in pleasure and derided the warnings of the messenger of God. Now they had already been warned, because Lot went around to his children, and you know how news gets around. Everybody knew about the warning, but it didn't look like there was any danger coming, so they didn't really make any different plans. But that very night, the door of mercy was forever closed to the careless inhabitants of Sodom. And then it finishes with this thought: God will not always be mocked. God is so merciful. He waits a long time. But as people see him waiting, they get bolder and bolder, or they get sleepier and sleepier. And all of a sudden, the Philistines are upon thee. And it's too late to change. The time to change is now. It's too late when the crisis strikes. Now I want to read you some things that were said about the Seventh-day Adventist Church way back in 1889. And from my ability to compare, I don't see improvement. And so I believe that this is a message for today to Seventh-day Adventists. Fifth Testimonies 4:56 and 7. The same disobedience and failure which were seen in the Jewish church have characterized in a greater degree, a what? Greater degree, the people who have had this great light from heaven in the last messages of warning. And what are the last messages of warning? 3 angels' messages. Those were entrusted to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. The most powerful warning that has ever been given to the human race has been entrusted to us to give it to the world. Shall we, like them, squander our opportunities and privileges until God shall permit oppression and persecution to come upon us? You know, the only way that God could get the message to the world in the Old Testament was to allow persecution to come upon them. And then he had a few faithful ones that took the gospel to the world. Is that going to have to happen again to Seventh-day Adventists? I think it's going to. Upon us, and the ones that are faithful will give the message under those circumstances, but we could have given the message before that happened. Same chapter, they, talking about church members, here's why they weren't giving the message. Have more interest in their trades, their farms, their houses, their merchandise, their dress, their tables, than in the souls of men and women whom they must meet face to face in the judgment. In the judgment, we can't say, I'm sorry I couldn't tell you the message because I was too busy taking care of my house. I was too busy making sure I had the latest clothing. I was too busy doing all these things. Somehow, we have to find a way to streamline our life so that we have time to tell people about what's coming upon the world. The people who claim to obey the truth are asleep. This is talking about Seventh-day Adventists. They could not be at ease as they are if they were awake. The love of the truth is dying out of their hearts. And maybe we're getting a bit soft. We try to tell somebody and they turn us off, and we don't want to go to the next door because somebody turned us off. You know what? He is hurrying you to a door where they will listen. Don't worry about rejection. God is seeking to reach those that are open to the message. And so, is the love of truth dying out of our hearts? God forbid. It needs to be getting brighter and brighter right now. At the very time when they should be strong in God, having a daily living experience, they are feeble, hesitating, relying upon the preachers for support when they should be ministering to others with mind and soul and voice and pen and time and money. Notice, we are to be all in. Everything we have, everything we are, with mind, with soul, with our voice, with our pen, and time and money. Now, as I've been reading some of these things, I've been getting bolder in doing things. I've been one of those that, kind of shy about sharing with people. Unless they're at church, then I'm different. But otherwise, I tend to be shy. But there's a group of people that meet in our community. They're the people that are trying to benefit the community in some ways. It's not a religious gathering. It's, put together by people of the town. And so I've been attending there, and I got bold enough to ask the leader, if I could talk to the group about religious liberty. Now that's kind of dangerous in a non-religious group, but I felt impressed I should do that, and so she didn't tell me I couldn't. So this last Thursday, I had my speaking appointment, and I talked to them about religious liberty. And I was surprised at the response. One lady stood up in the back as soon as I finished, and she said, "I'm so glad that you talked to us about this today." And after the meeting was over, two others came up to me, and one of them was saying, "That's my favorite subject." And she said, "I am so thankful that you talked about this today. We are losing our religious liberty." And so, we need to get bold. We have a message for the world, and we need to be giving it. And there'll be some people that'll be glad for it. You have displayed greater wisdom in the service of evil than in the cause of God. Talking to Seventh-day Adventists. You have perverted, disabled, nay, even besotted your powers by your intense activity in worldly pursuits to the neglect of God's work. That's pretty strong language. Now, of course, we have to make a living, but that's not our focus, making a living. And if we focus only on that, notice what happens to us. We get to the place where we don't know how to share our faith. We don't have the courage to share our faith. We feel we can't share it because we have destroyed our powers to do it. Also, it said, these are all from that same chapter, it would be better for a worldling never to have seen a professor of religion than to come under the influence of one who is ignorant of the power of godliness. It would be better if we didn't have all of these people going to church who weren't really in. It would be better because they are hindering the success of God's work. And who is it talking about? Seventh-day Adventists. Now, I'm sure it's true in all churches, but this chapter is talking about us. In Third Selected Messages, page 387, says, America, where the greatest light from heaven has been shining upon the people, can become the place of greatest peril and darkness because the people do not continue to practice the truth and walk in the light. That is telling us, if you look at it carefully, the worst persecution is going to take place in the United States. It's going to be like France. France persecuted every single Huguenot that they could find, every single Albigense they could find. They either drove them out of the country or they killed them. They didn't want any of them to be there. This is what's going to happen. The Reformation at the beginning went in France better than in any country. And so they had light. But when they turned against the light, it became the worst darkness of any place on earth. That's where this country is headed. Are you prepared for that? If you were to wake up tomorrow morning and you were being sought after to be killed or to be fined at least for something, would you be prepared for that? This is how it's going to happen if we don't wake up. In Revelation 22, verses 11 and 12, it addresses an event that nobody's going to know when it's going to occur, but there is a point at which it will occur, and when it does, the whole world is going to be engulfed in a destruction like nobody has ever seen. Talk about Third World War. That's going to take place after the close of probation, and the 7 last plagues are going to be falling upon the earth. And everything that happened to France is going to happen on a worldwide scale, and we have to be in the middle of it if we're still alive. And God stands up from his throne and he says, "He that is unjust, let him be unjust still. And he which is filthy, let him be filthy still. And he that is righteous, let him be righteous still. And he that is holy, let him be holy still. And behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me, to give every man according as his work shall be." we need to keep our gaze fixed upon that statement that's going to take place. A time when nobody can change. Now we can change, but at that time, nobody can change. And it is our job to help those who are willing to change to find out how close these events are. Jesus himself was very concerned, and we close with these words in Matthew 24, 42 to 44. Watch, therefore, for ye know not what hour your Lord doth come. There's only one hope, and that is to be ready. It's not a time to get ready, although if we're not ready, we better get ready. It's a time to be ready. But know this, that if the good man of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. Therefore, be ye also ready, for in such an hour as ye think not, the Son of Man cometh. Now the coming of Jesus is not just his coming in the clouds, but all the events of the last days are a part of his coming. And so the moment is going to come when it's like we hear that voice. The Philistines are upon you. You are now in trouble for your faith. You're going to pay a price for your faith. The Philistines are upon thee. And then will come that decision. He that is just will stay that way. He that is filthy will stay that way. That announcement will take place. At that point, it's too late. Everything is over as far as who goes to heaven and who's ready to meet Jesus. And then we see Jesus come in the clouds of heaven. Truly, the final events are at our door. Today, as we sing the closing hymn, if you recognize that the Holy Spirit is giving you a wake-up call through this message, I invite you to come, and we're going to pray for you after we finish the song. May God help us to really be a church here that is fully on board with being where we need to be as these events unfold.